Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is Sheikh Bilal Haq. Okay, you must have seen the last part of performance measurement. I'm coming towards the fourth part of performance measurement. We have seen up till now many different types of ratios. Now let us discuss some further ratios. Okay, so let me give you a quick overview of the ratios that we have seen up till now. We have seen return on capital employed. Second, we have seen up till now is return on sales. The third one was asset turnover. Fourth one was the asset turnover. After that, we had seen the current ratio. Fifth one was the quick ratio, also known as the acid test ratio. Sixth ratio that we had seen up till now is inventory days ratio, then receivable days ratio, then payable days ratio, and last but not the least, capital gearing ratio. Now let's come to if you guys want to review all these ratios, you can go and see my previous videos. Inshallah, you will be getting the knowledge of all these ratios that I've written up till now. Now I'm coming towards the income gearing ratio or interest cover ratio. As you guys know it very well, that each and every business is dependent. In fact, 90% of the business is dependent upon the loan that they have taken from either from the banks or from the financial institutions. So interest cover ratio is basically the division of operating profit divided by the finance cost. This shows how many times the finance cost, that is interest payment, could be paid out of the operating profit. The higher the figure, the better it is. Now, this is the ratio which shows that if I have got a good operating profit, I can easily pay off the finance cost that I have taken in terms of long-term loan. Now, you guys knows it very well. What do you basically mean by the finance cost? Finance cost means the amount of interest that we have to bear in order to fulfill the long-term debt or in order to pay the interest amount of the long-term debt. Now, let's create an example of finance cost. Let's suppose the question states that the operating profit of a company is 70,000 and the finance cost of this company is, let's suppose, 20,000. So you are about to calculate the interest cover, that is income gearing ratio. Now, in order to calculate the interest cover or income gearing ratio, I'll have to divide the operating profit by finance cost. In this scenario, I've been given the operating profit of 70,000 divided by 20,000. I'll be getting an answer of, let me calculate it first. 70,000 divided by 20,000, I'll be getting the answer of 3.5. 3.5. Now, the interpretation of this ratio is that for every 1 rupee of finance cost or interest, we safely have 3.5 rupee of operating profit. Now, this is a good company because for every 1 rupee of finance cost that we have right now, we are generating 3.5 rupees of operating profit. So we can easily pay the finance cost that is there within our business. So this is the ratio that we have discussed right now. Moving on, let's come to some other different types of ratios. Uh, Let me discuss the efficiency, the production volume ratio. What do you mean by production volume? That is, after production volume, what is the capacity ratio? So the production volume ratio assesses the overall production relative to a plan, relative to a plan or budget. A ratio in excess of, let's suppose, a ratio. Okay. 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 So production volume ratio. The production volume ratio assesses the overall production relative to a plan or budget. A ratio in excess of 100% indicate that the overall production is above planned level, and below 100% indicates a shortfall compared to the planned ratio. Now, the production volume ratio is moreover concerned with the standard costing. So, what is the formula of production volume ratio? Actual output measured in standard hours divided by budgeted production hour. Acha, let me discuss the other ratio as well. Then I'll be coming towards an example and I'll be letting you guys know what is basically the production volume ratio. So, capacity ratio. The capacity ratio provide information in terms of the hours of working time that have been possible in a period. The capacity ratio is actual production hours worked divided by budgeted production hours. A ratio in excess of 100% indicates that more hours have been spent, have been worked than were in the budget, and below 100% means less hour has been spent that were budgeted. Now let's come to an efficiency ratio as well. Now we will be dealing with three different ratios simultaneously. We'll be seeing all these three ratios in a particular question. The efficiency ratio is useful indicator of productivity based on output compared with input. The efficiency ratio is actual output measured in standard hours divided by actual production hours worked. The ratio in excess of 100 indicates that the workforce has been efficient, and then the budget predicted, and below 100% means less efficient than the budget predicted. Now, let us discuss a question. Suppose that the budgeted output for a period is 2000 units. He's saying, suppose that the budgeted output for the period is 2000 units, and the budgeted time for the production of these 2000 units is 200 hours. The actual output in the period is 2300 units, and the actual time worked by the labor force is 180 hours. Required. Calculate how productive the workforce has been. So he's asking me to calculate the production volume ratio. Now, what formula will I be using for the production volume ratio is, now let us do this question. Firstly, I'm calculating the production volume ratio. Now, what do you mean by production volume ratio? The production volume ratio. Now, while assessing the production volume ratio, Okay, so if I'm assessing the production volume ratio, the formula for the assessment of production volume ratio is actual output measured in standard hours divided by budgeted production hours. So the formula is actual output measured in hours, standard hours divided by budgeted production hours. So if I divide this by budgeted production hours multiplied by, obviously multiplied by 100, due to the fact that this my formula is particularly measured in comparison with 100. So while viewing this formula, we can easily say, okay, so this is the question that we are discussing right now. Suppose that the budgeted output for the period is 2000 units, and the budgeted time for the production of these units is 200 hours. And the actual output for the period is 2300 units, and the actual time worked by the labor force is 180 hours. Let me write all these factors before doing this question. The question that we are discussing right now states that the budgeted output for the period is 2000 units. 2000 units, and the budgeted hours or the budgeted time period to produce these is 200 units. Now comparatively, the actual figures that we are given is actual output for the period. Actual output for the period is 2300 units. This means that we have produced more than the budgeted, and actual hours taken in order to produce these are 180 hours. Now, the question states that you need to calculate three ratios. Number one is the production volume ratio, production volume ratio. Second one is the capacity ratio. And the third one that we need to calculate is the efficiency ratio. So let us calculate one by one. I'm first going for the production volume ratio. Now, in order to calculate the production volume ratio, I need to divide the actual output measured, the actual output measured in standard hours divided by budgeted production hours multiplied by 100. Now, the actual output measured in standard hours. What is the actual output that I have measured in these standard hours? Now, the standard hours, for this, I first need to know what is the standard hours. I need to calculate, I need to do some working. So let me do working one. I first need to know that if I want to get the figure of actual output measured in standard hours, I first need to calculate the standard hours per unit. So in order to calculate the standard hours per unit, the question stated that it takes 200 hours to make 2000 units. So if I divide if I divide 200 hours in order to calculate 2000 units, you get an answer of 0.1 hour. You get an answer of 0.1 hour per unit of output. Okay, so now I need to know through working number two, what I'll be getting is what is the actual output, what actual output should have been produced, what actual output, what is the actual time period that should have been taken if I produce the actual number of units. So the actual number of units are 2300 units. If we go and produce 2000 2300 units multiplied by the standard hours per unit, that is 0.1, I would have taken 230 hours. So if I take 230 hours, so this is basically the actual output that is measured in the standard hours. 230 hours would have been taken, divided by budgeted production hours. So the budgeted production hours that were given in the question is 200 hours, divided by 200 multiplied by 100. So I'll be getting an answer. I'll be getting an answer of 90. I'll be getting an answer. Sorry, I'll be getting the answer of 115%. 115%. This means that my actual production is way better than the budgeted production, because you can easily see from this question as well that the budgeted units of 2000 should have been produced in 200 hours, but we were able to produce 2300 units in 180 hours. Now, what is the depiction of this answer? See, this answer is stating above 100%, which means, now let's come back to the depiction that was stated in this particular scenario. The depiction of this ratio is the production volume ratio assesses the overall production relative to the plan or budget. A ratio in excess of 100% indicates that the overall production is above the planned, and below 100% indicates the. इसका मतलब है that if I go back to this question, I can easily state that the overall actual production is 15% more than the budgeted production. It is basically 15% more than the budgeted production. Now, this is a good scenario that we are being given right now. Now, let's come to the second ratio and let me calculate the second ratio. Okay, the second ratio is the capacity ratio. Capacity ratio states that the actual production hour worked divided by budgeted production hours. Actual production hours work divided by the budgeted production hour multiplied by 100. So the capacity ratio in this scenario is the budgeted production hour, actual production hour worked is 180. So the actual production hours worked is 180 divided by budgeted production hours, that is 200. 200 hours 200 hours multiplied by 100. I'll be getting an answer of 90%. Now, what is the depiction of this 90%, or how do you interpret this 90%? Let's come back to that ratios or the book that we are using. Capacity ratio. A ratio in excess of 100% indicate that more hours have been worked than were in the budgeted, and below 100% means less hours have been worked than budgeted. So this is the answer that I'm getting is below 100%. This means that less hours have been worked than is budgeted. That is 10% less hours. Now, let me give a great conclusion. This capacity ratio is just the capacity fulfillment. You could have worked for 100% capacity, but you worked for 90% capacity. Now, this seems to be a bad situation. But on the other hand, if we see this question, working at the 90% capacity, our company was able to produce 2,300 units. Working at the 90% capacity, we were able to produce 2,300 units, and this is something of great incentive for the company. It's an opportunity for the company. So this means that company, although they worked for less than the efficiency, less than the 100% efficiency, but they were able to generate more units as were budgeted. So let's come to the third ratio that we are about to calculate, and that third ratio is the efficiency ratio. So efficiency ratio is actual output measured in standard hours divided by actual production hours worked. Actual production hours worked multiplied by it. So as you guys know very well, we have already calculated the actual output measured in standard hours. The actual output measured in standard hours was 230. So 230 is the actual output measured in standard hours divided by actual production hours. So actual production hours were 180 hours divided by 180 multiplied by 100, I'll be getting an answer of 127.78%. Now, 127.78%, sir, let us see the interpretation of this ratio. The ratio in excess of 100% indicates that the workforce has been more efficient than the budget predicted, and below 100% means that the workforce has been less efficient. So, in this ratio, we can easily see that the workforce has been very efficient. The workforce is more efficient than it was budgeted. Safely, the workforce have worked 27.78% more than the budgeted expectation. So, one of the best conclusions that we can derive from these three ratios is the first and the foremost ratio that we were looking at is the production volume ratio. The production volume ratio is basically the depiction of how much you were ought to produce and what is the actual production that you have done. Then we came to the second ratio, that is capacity ratio. Capacity ratio states the actual production hour work divided by the budgeted production hours. Then we came to the efficiency ratio. Efficiency ratio stated the actual production measured in the standard hours, how much workforce is efficient in terms of production. Now, let me draft another question. What you guys need to do is, you guys need to copy this question, follow the instructions, and do it yourself. Pause this video, then come back and verify your answer. So, budgeted production should have been 3,000 units, and budgeted hours to produce should have been 400 hours. But the actual production is just 2,900 units, and the actual hours taken is 420 hours. Now you are required to calculate the production volume ratio. You are required to calculate the production volume ratio firstly. Then you have to calculate the efficiency ratio. Third ratio that you need to calculate is the capacity ratio. All these ratios should have been calculated Okay, so we need to calculate three different ratios. And how will we be calculating these ratios? We'll be using the formula of production volume ratio, that is actual output measured in standard hours divided by budgeted production hours. Let's come back and find out the first ratio, that is production volume ratio, actual output measured in standard hours divided by actual output measured in standard hours divided by budgeted production hours. So divided by budgeted production hours multiplied by 100. So first I need to calculate the actual output measured in standard hours. Now how will I be calculating the actual output measured in standard hours is, how will I be calculating the actual output measured in standard hours? I'll be doing a working number one, actual output measured in standard hours. Okay, so let me calculate this. First, I'll be calculating the hour per unit, the budgeted hour per unit. How will we be calculating the budgeted hour per unit is, I've been given the budgeted hours and I'll be dividing this by budgeted units. So the answer is 400 hours divided by 3000 units. This means if I divide 400 by 3000, 0.133 hours per unit. Now the actual production is 2900 units. So 2900 units, if they were to be produced according to the standard hours, according to the standard hour per unit, that is 0.1333, you will get an answer of, if these 2900 units, 400 divided by, let me recheck it, 400 divided by 3000, which means 0.133. If actual production is done according to 0.133, yes, I should have completed this in, I'm taking out the round of figure, that is 386 or 387 hours. So the actual output measured in standard hours should have been 387 hours. However, we took 420 hours. We took 420 hours to produce this. So the interpretation of this ratio states that our answer is, if I divide this by 420 hours, 92%. This means that, as I have depicted before in this particular question, that the overall actual production is 15% more. In this scenario, we can safely say that we were able to produce less than the budgeted hours. We did not, our production volume is not as good as it should have been in comparison with the budgeted hours. So Let's come to the second formula that I need to calculate, and that is the efficiency ratio. Now, how will we calculate the efficiency ratio? We have seen this formula. Efficiency ratio is the actual output measured in, sorry. So let's calculate efficiency ratio before. Actual output measured in standard hours divided by actual hours worked. So the efficiency ratio shall be calculated by using actual output measured in standard hours divided by actual production hour worked divided by actual production hours worked multiplied by 100. So the actual output measured in standard hours are 387 is the actual output measured in standard hours, and the actual production hours worked is 420 hours multiplied by 100. So I'll be getting the answer. Of 387, 420. Sorry, I made a mistake over here. It should have been budgeted hours. Budgeted hours are 400. So the answer to this question would have been 400, that is 96%. Sorry. I basically calculated the capacity ratio. So 96% will be my answer. Moving on, efficiency ratio, I'll be getting the answer of 92%. This means that we are 8% below our efficiency. We are basically 8% below our efficiency. We could have produced more, but we produced less. So moving on, now I'm trying to calculate the capacity ratio, that is actual production hour work divided by budgeted production hours. Let's find out the third ratio, that is capacity ratio, which means actual production hours worked divided by capacity ratio stated actual production hours worked divided by budgeted production hours. Now we are being given with the actual hours. We are also being told by the budgeted production hours multiplied by 100. The actual production hours worked is 420 hours. So the actual production hour worked is 420 hours divided by budgeted production hours is 400 hours. Using these two given measurements, I can calculate the capacity ratio. Now, तकरीबन आधा घंटा हो मैं लगा हाँ इसकी वीडियो बना के लेक्चर रिकॉर्डेड भेज रहा हूँ 1-2 क्लासों को ना. चलो वो मतलब उसमें लाइव नहीं पढ़ाना पड़ता, सवाल जवाब नहीं होते. सवाल जवाब नहीं होते, प्लस वो डाउनलोड भी नहीं हो सकती, तो अच्छा है वो, तो आगे भी नहीं जाएगी. Okay, so if I want to calculate the capacity ratio, how will I be calculating this capacity ratio is by dividing 420 divided by 400 hours and multiplying it by 100. I'll be getting an answer of 105%. This means that our budgeted is actual production hours worked is more than the budgeted production hour. But as I've told you way before, that this ratio can never be used on a standalone basis. You need to use all these three ratios simultaneously in order to calculate and in order to make a decision making. In order to go for a decision making prospects, you need to calculate all these ratios simultaneously, because one particular ratio, either it is efficiency, capacity, or volume ratio, choosing any one of them, using any one of them will not give you a good answer. So let us move forward and let me give you a question, and then I'll be concluding this class. Okay, so I'm giving you two different questions. Try calculating the answers of both of them. So the budgeted question states the budgeted production is 5,000 units, and they were all produced, they should have all been produced in 390 hours, but the actual production is 5,030 units, and the actual production is 5,030 units, and the actual hours taken is 400 hours. Now what you need to calculate is calculate production volume ratio first, then calculate the capacity ratio. Okay, I'm using this short form, but I guess you can interpret what am I asking right now. And the third ratio that you need to calculate is the efficiency ratio. Okay, so another question that I'm drafting right now. Acha, what you guys can do is you guys can complete this question. You guys can complete both of these questions. Let me know the answers, and then I'll be discussing you the answers of these questions in my next video. So the budgeted production is 5,700 units, and the budgeted hours to be taken is let's suppose 500 hours, but the actual production is 5,500 units, and that also is being produced. Budgeted hours is, let's suppose, 550 hours. Now required is that you need to calculate the production volume ratio, capacity ratio, efficiency ratio. Let me give you two more questions so that we can basically understand the entire concept very well. But what I need to know is you will have to give me the interpretation of all these questions that you are doing. Okay, you can contact me through my email address. All those questions that you have done, all those students who have my WhatsApp number, they may contact me through my WhatsApp number, and all those students who don't have my number, they may contact me through my email address. Okay, so another question that I'm drafting right now is budgeted production, budgeted hours, actual production, and actual hours. So the budgeted production is 7,000 units. Budgeted hours is 360 hours. However, the actual production, the actual production is 6,900 units, and that is being produced in 350 hours. So the requirement for this question is to calculate the capacity, production, volume, and the third one is efficiency ratio. Another question is budgeted production is 8,000 units. Budgeted hours is 560 hours. The actual production is, let's suppose the actual production is 8,200 units, and that also 8,200 units, and that also is being produced. The actual hours taken is 555. Let me rewrite this so that you can understand it well. 555 hours. I hope so that my writing is quite prominent and you might be able to understand it properly. Otherwise, you can go with the audibility. So the required scenario is calculate capacity, production volume, and last but not the least, the efficiency ratio. Now you need to calculate all these four ratios. I'm ending this video. Take it as your homework, start calculating it. But remember, you just don't need to calculate them. You also need to write the interpretation. For all those students who want to contact me in this regard, who want to show me the answers, they may contact me through my email address. At the end of this video, I'll be uploading my email address as well. Thank you so much. This is Sheikh Bilal Haq signing off. Now we have completed the basic performance measurement techniques that could have been tested at any basic costing related paper. I hope so. You would have liked these videos. There are total 3 to 4 videos that I've uploaded in regard with the performance measurement. I hope so that you guys would have you would have benefited from these videos. Take care. This is Sheikh Bilal Haq signing off.